Greetings, lords and ladies, Kaiser here, and welcome to a brand new Let's Play, this time of Paradox's newest game, Imperator Rome. Now, this is going to be a little bit of a pilot/tutorial episode. Now, if you are already familiar with how the game works, what are the mechanics, etc, etc, you're more than welcome to just skip this video, head to the first episode, which should be up either today or tomorrow, probably tomorrow. And as I said on the stream, we will be playing as Epirus. We want to play Epirus and hopefully live up to his legacy, actual historical legacy. Jump right in there. Alexander the Great. In Babylon, 18 years ago, the Argead king Alexander died suddenly at the age of 32. In the 5 years preceding his death, his continuing military successes had reshaped the world as known to the Greeks, his empire stretching uninterrupted from Egypt to the Indus. The shock of Alexander's early death and his lack of a chosen successor sent shockwaves through the hierarchy of satraps and generals who attended him, splintering his empire into elements ruled by these potentates, styled as the Diadochi. For many years, they and their successors have been locked in a bitter struggle over the future of the empire, drawing all nations within their sphere of influence into the conflict. The wars of the Diadochi will surely continue. Perhaps it is up to Epirus to decide how they will end. We will see. Now, I've played this game for about, I don't know, 25 to 30 hours now altogether. Usually, I'll be completely honest, I kept starting off as Epirus just to try and see what would be the best method of starting off the game. But sure enough, everything was more or less always dependent on what this big blue effer right over here usually does, because right now, as far as the Greek peninsula, I suppose, good God, it has its own name, but I forgot what it's called. Sure, let's just say Greece. All right, in the lands of Greece, Macedon is currently the most massive superpower, currently boasting almost 50 cities. And 21 cohorts at the very beginning, before anything even starts. We are currently in the possession of 12 cohorts, all of which are actually archers. Now then, for a quick introduction, as you can see, the interface, it probably looks familiar to those of you that have played Paradox games, Paradox titles before. First one is Gold Treasury. That one's usually the most important one, though from my experience, the more you play, or rather, the later you get into the game, the less it really matters, unless you really try and boost your economy as much as possible. We will, of course, try to be doing that. Manpower, familiar to everybody, especially from EU4. CK2, not really. Military power, civic power, oratory power, and religious power. Now, these are more commonly known, at least on the internet, as mana. We gain these powers, these points. Monthly, as you can see, base is +2, and then the additional ones are usually your monarch's abilities, your monarch stats, divided by 2, rounded up downwards. So despite the fact that our finesse, so our civic, is currently on 9, we are only gaining an additional 4 points per month due to it being rounded down. Stability, also a familiar situation, especially to EU4 and EU3 veterans, etc. Though in this game, it's apparently, like, I haven't played EU4 that much, I'll be completely honest, and honestly, it's not as effective, or rather not as effective, but as impactful in EU4, the stability at least. Monthly legitimacy, that is very nice to have, though the most punishing of all of these, if you ask me at least, is the aggressive expansion. Now, granted, this is the points that goes down the most, usually the fastest. They reduce the aggressive expansion reduces not only the political or rather diplomatic opinion of all of your neighbors, but it also reduces the happiness of people outside of your culture group. Now, you can imagine that as you spread, as you conquer new lands, all of those are now not in your culture group. And of course, the more lands you take, the higher your aggressive expansion. And actually getting those lands under your control basically forces you to actually just wait a little bit, wait for the aggressive expansion to go down, and try and continue playing like that. Now, I am hoping, because from my experience, once again, there are multiple periods in the game where you basically have nothing to do, because either you are out of quote-unquote mana, you're out of money, you're out of possibilities of where to actually where to expand. And you'll see why, because once again, this guy, either him, Phrygia, or Egypt not as much, but Phrygia and Macedon usually guarantee almost the entirety of the Greek peninsula, meaning that there's not really much room for you to expand into Greece. And if you start off ally to Taulantia, as you can see right here, if Macedon, for whatever reason, or, well, for whatever reason, for the reason of expansion, of course, decides to just attack Taulantia, take them over, you are essentially locked as Epirus, and just cannot move anywhere. And you're basically left with this in a situation where you have to wait for some of these diplomatic relations to just fall apart, them no longer being guaranteed by Macedon, by Phrygia, etc., etc., and just slowly pick away at the small states and try and grow as fast as possible before Macedon decides to fabricate a claim on you. Now then, as you can see right here, there are multiple alerts. Usually a smart idea to actually pay attention to these now, isn't it? Bad research ratio. Indeed. Right now, our research efficiency is only at 47%. Now, this is affected by multiple things. For one thing, you can actually pick inventions. You can pick certain omens, which we'll get to next. But most of all, as you can see, citizens produce 4.47 research points each month. With an output of 53 each year and a population of 114, we get an efficiency of 47% for our research. Now, if we check our nation overview, as we can see right here, truly out of that entire population, we only have 17 citizens. If we would want to actually increase this research efficiency, usually the best way to do it is to have a larger part of your population be citizens. Now, that can be done very simply by entering any city. As you can see, like if we enter Nicopolis, for instance, as you can see, we have only 3 citizens. This is our capital, as you can see right there by that little fort, or rather tower icon. If we select Freeman, we can simply promote them by using our oratory powers. If we promote them, granted we lose our freeman population, but we gain citizen population, which increases research as mentioned before. Now, each citizen type gives you different things. Like mentioned just now, the citizens offer you research points as well as commerce value. Freemen give you local manpower, so the more freemen you have, the higher your maximum manpower, as well as your monthly gain of manpower. Tribesmen are usually somewhere in the middle between freemen and slaves. They give you a little bit of tax and a little bit of local manpower, so more often than not, whenever I have tribesmen, if we're not actually playing a tribe, which of course right now we're not, I more often than not just immediately promote them into at least freemen so that we have more manpower, and perhaps eventually into citizens so that we can increase our research efficiency, our research gain. And the fourth type are slaves. Now, slaves have two uses. One, of course, as you can see, they gave you base tax. The other thing is that depending on the amount of slaves in each city, you may gain a surplus of the resource produced in that city. You can see which resource is produced right over there. So our capital of Nicopolis is currently producing, or rather not currently, but it produces olives. And as you can see right there, some in the middle, when exporting national slave happiness, under that, every 15 slave pops will provide an additional +1 olives, which means that if we manage to have 15 slave pops in Nicopolis, or really in any city whatsoever, we gain an additional resource of that type. Now, we'll get to resources in just a little bit, or rather, let's just do it right now. So as you can see right here which resources our cities are currently producing. If we hover over a specific resource, for instance, the Donna's precious metals, as you can see, local citizen happiness. So the province, right, let's get that over with first. The areas of the map are divided into, I believe, 4 separate parts. First is the city. City is the smallest part possible. Next is the province. As you can see, province of Epirus in Greece. So all of these cities, as you can see by this outline, belong to the province of Epirus. And as you can see right now, it actually outlines the entire province, even the pieces of lands, or rather the cities, that are currently not in our control. And as it says right here, this is the area of Greece. Now, if we click provinces, there we go, we can actually see the provinces right here. Next, let me just find... Next are the regions. Right, that is the highest one. Sorry, I said 4, it's 3. As you can see, Epirus is currently located in Greece. These are the areas. Now, why is this important? Or rather, region, sorry. Why is this important? Well, it's important because once you expand beyond your current region, so beyond Greece. Now, for instance, if we betrayed and attacked Tolantia, which hopefully we will eventually, as you can see, it belongs under Illyria, which means that this province, or rather this region, would have to have a different governor. We are currently governing Epirus, and honestly we can govern the entirety of the Greek area, if I'm not mistaken. And once you're outside of the region, you have to pick new governors for the actual provinces. Sorry, we were right here. So now that we've got that out of the way, how do we get 15 slaves? Once again, it's very, very easy. If we click on, for instance, Ambrakia. Now, do keep in mind that these are Greek names, and I will most likely be messing up a lot of them, so I'll try my best. I'll try my best as always, but no promises. You can actually move using civic power. You can actually move your population into either cities within the province. So, for instance, we could move a freeman from Ambrakia all the way to Orikos, as you can see right here, or we can transfer them into an adjacent region if that region is outside of our province. So, for instance, this province, what is it called? Oikalia? Let's just say that that's it. If we actually own this province, we would be able to also transfer a freeman, or rather a pop, from Ambrakia into Oichalia. But we couldn't do that from Dodona into Oikalia. Oikalia, I'll just keep saying it like that. If anybody knows how to actually pronounce that, I don't know, please let me know. Though, of course, you do have to keep in mind that we are limited in how much power, civic power we possess, and that is the strategy part of this game, if you ask me. Just planning what to actually use your powers on, or your mana on. Now let's get back to the research. Over here, as you can see, we have all four different advances: martial advances, civic advances, oratory advances, and religious advances. Currently, as you can see here, the research speed, the research speed, there we go, is affected by the level of the current researcher's stats. Now, as you can see, this guy is picked as our martial researcher, and his martial is 9, which you can see under his age, so 32 years old. 9 martial, 10 civic, 1 oratory, and 8 religion. I know that the names are different for the actual characters. I believe it's like martial, finesse, something something, and zeal is the last one. I forgot what the oratory one is. At any rate, you can, of course, pick your own researches. Right now, all of our other characters are pretty abysmal when it comes to actual military, so we'll just leave this guy there. These are the inventions. So if you can imagine, if you're an EU4 player, just imagine these as cheap ideas. As we can see right here, professional sailors, trireme discipline, starting experience, military tech investment. Now, military tech investment, that basically means that the research speed is increased by 5. Though, if you ask me, herbalism, at least as a first one, or at not first one, but one of the very first ones to take, would be perfect, because it just increases technology speed for all of the researchers. So definitely much better than just the military artisans. Standardized measures: national commerce income, national tax, national tribesman output, proxenoi, improve opinion maximum. Just to explain what that improve opinion is, there is one of the possibilities when you try to interact with other nations is in the relation actions you can actually improve opinion. Now, the base improve opinion, the base number of opinion that you can actually improve is, as you can see right there, plus 50. You can increase this by picking either inventions, by picking government focuses, we'll get to those in a moment, etc, etc. And so if we pick proxenoi, so that would be an additional 20%, so we could actually increase our opinion with any of our neighbors, or rather with anyone we really wanted, by 60, not just by 50. Aggressive protection, fabricate claim cost is minus 10%. The initial fabricate claim cost, if we tried to fabricate claims under covert actions, right now is 180. Now, the base is 200. The only reason we are on 180 is because of our current government stance, which is the bellicose stance, which, as you can see right there, it says fabricate claim cost is minus 10%. Basically, a bellicose diplomatic stance means that all diplomatic efforts are focused on justification for expansion and intimidation of nearby countries. Because of that, of course, all of our neighbors have a opinion penalty of us, but yeah, I always like to have the fabricate claim cost, and this will most likely be the first invention we will be going for. Humane conduct, diplomatic reputation. Basically, when you try to get anyone to do anything, whether it is a trade agreement, whether it is calling to arms, whether it is making an alliance, anything really, you have, of course, negative and positive points. Now, this basically just increases the positive points by 1. So it is definitely not as strong as in EU4, where I believe it's either +3 or +5. I can't remember. Like I said, I don't play much EU4, but I believe it's either +3 or +5 reasons for people to accept what you're trying to offer them, or rather to accept what you're trying to tell them to do. In Imperator Rome, it only gives you a +1. I mean, it helps, but it's not that significant, really. I just won't bother with that. Omen power, we'll get to omens in a moment. Army morale recovery, that's always very nice to have, because this does take effect, of course, even while you're in enemy territories. Herbalism, like I said, one of my favorite things to take for technology speed. So the first ones we'll probably take will be aggressive protection, after that herbalism when we can. And then we'll see how we continue. Probably the next one would be national commerce. No, not sorry, national tax, because right now, as you can see in the treasury right there, we'll check the treasury right now. Actually, we're done with that research screen. So income comes from taxes, commerce, and tributaries. Right now, Epirus has no tributaries, so most of our income right now comes from taxes. We can, of course, affect the amount of taxes. We can get 25% additional taxes, at least from the slaves, which are the base tax source, for the cost of 20% less research points. Now, if you're very desperate, you can go this, but I usually don't really go this. I just leave it on default. But of course, if you have high national unrest, you may think, or rather may consider, actually lowering it for by 25% to have that -1 national unrest. Commerce, this is something I like to fiddle with a lot, because right now it has no effect, but if we increase our national commerce income by 15%, right now it might not seem like much, but as we increase in size, as we increase in the number of trade agreements, or rather trade routes that we can have, this usually becomes the main source of income, even if it doesn't look like that right now. You'll see as we play the game. However, the slaves needed for a surplus are suddenly +2, which means that it would no longer take 15 slaves for an additional resource, not research, resource, there we go. It would take 17 instead of 15. Or we go free trade, which I usually go in order to increase the number of import trade routes. Always a lovely thing to have, because every trade route, whether you're exporting or importing, each and single one of them actually gives you income. As well as, well, you can imagine having the bonuses of the actual resource in your capital province is always a very nice thing to have. Army maintenance, fleet maintenance, the usual, paying tributes. We're of course not a tributary of anyone. Fort maintenance. Do we actually not have any forts in the very beginning? I actually forgot that. Wait, let me just, fortifications map mode. We do in Nicopolis, but apparently, apparently we're not paying anything for that. And wages, of course. You can increase the monthly loyalty of all of the characters in your government, I suppose. As you can see right here, we'll get to the Scorn Families in just a moment. Or you can reduce those wages by 25%, however, you lose 0.5 loyalty per month, which is just not worth it. I just leave the wages completely alone. Now, with the newest hotfix, even if you have army maintenance, fleet maintenance, and fort maintenance all on lowest, with the newest hotfix, or rather just with the newest patch, Demetrius patch, I believe it's called, it automatically sets everything to normal, or rather to default maintenance, the moment you either are declared war upon or you declare war yourself. Speaking of trade routes, there we go. That is the next alert right there. Let's just go back to the map mode right here. Trade routes. Each province usually has a single trade route available from the very beginning. Now, this number can be increased by multiple in multiple ways. For one thing, you can increase your power. Epirus right now is a local power, as you can see. Diplomatic relations, diplomatic range. If we increase our power, I believe that you gain an additional capital import. So trade import. Only a capital, however. I know that eventually, like, I don't know, about 50, 70 years, well, let's just say it like this. Once you gain technology, civic advances, I believe up to 6 or 7 or something. We'll see once we get there, but you can actually gain an additional import route throughout your entire empire. Because as you can see right there, if you look on the very bottom, it actually tells you, right, I didn't point this out. This is not it. This is not it. Even if you take all of these, which is very unlikely, even if you take all of these inventions, once you gain a level in any of the research advances, you gain 3 new inventions. As you can see right there on the very bottom, unlocks Logistics Bureau, which means capital import route. So, alright, there we go. You can actually have another import route from there. Research points plus 10, civic tech advancement plus 5. Each one gives you an additional 3. Now, here's the thing. If you're really thinking about taking any of these inventions, I urge you to take it as fast as possible, especially if you have a high research efficiency, because the moment these researchers are done and you get the new 3 inventions, those 3 inventions cover your current inventions. So if we didn't take any of these 3 zeal or rather religious inventions, once the religious advance reaches level 1, 3 new inventions would appear here. Now granted, you could still get these 3, but only if you actually took at least 1, if not all 3, of the newer ones. So definitely keep an eye on that. If you're actually after any of these inventions, be sure to take them before the next advancement. Now trade routes. Route. Not sure. Each and single one of these gives you certain bonuses. Now, strategic resources, these are very important when it comes to what kind of troops we can create. As you can see right there, if we hover over iron, it says it allows heavy infantry units. Elephants, war elephants, heavy cavalry, light cavalry, horse archers, triremes, and camel cavalry. Right now, if we check which units we can actually produce under the recruit cohorts, this is, by the way, the macro builder. You can just, if you don't feel like just click, we will not be doing that. If you don't feel like building units from here, you can also build units directly from the army. If you click recruit to army, the game will automatically start, like, if I can actually show you this, but if we start clicking recruit to army, as you can see, the game starts creating units in separate provinces, and as soon as those units are up, they are going to be joining this army. They will automatically join the army that you're recruiting from. While in the macro builder, if you train from here, they will stay in the province where they were trained until you move them yourself. Now, currently we can train archers, camels no, chariots no, heavy cavalry no, heavy infantry no, horse archers, light cavalry, Hipastis, which is like essentially light infantry, I guess skirmishers, light infantry, war elephants, and triers, so triremes. Of course, you can only train triremes in towns or rather cities with actual ports. Now, I do not believe that you can actually build ports, so the number of ports is limited, as you can see by these icons right here. At least I don't think so. If I'm wrong, please do correct me about that. That is one thing I am not sure of. Growth, as you can see, grain, fish, and livestock each give population growth. Population is usually population happiness or output. As you can see, local freeman output, olives, slave happiness, freeman happiness, citizen happiness, etc. Military, these give different bonuses, such as fort defense, starting experience, recruitment speed, supply limit, etc., etc. And economy and technology, these usually improve either, as you can see, local tax, commerce income, papyrus, increases your research points, etc. But you may be noticing that each resource has different bonuses. Now let me explain that. For instance, if we look at precious materials, or let's look at wine, for instance. If the province is currently producing or currently importing a single unit of wine, so local freeman happiness goes up by 5. each surplus in a province. So as you can see right there, it says each surplus in a province and surplus in the capital. Each surplus in the province gives you an additional +1 freeman happiness. So, for instance, if we had more wine in our capital province, it would give us an additional +1 freeman happiness. Or the same goes for every province, really. Like, for instance, once we take over Greece, if we have, I don't know, 2, 3 units of wine being produced there, we would have, what is that, 7 freeman happiness. But then under that you see surplus in the capital. That only takes effect when you have a surplus, like it says, in your capital province. And as you can see, army maintenance cost -5. Now these surpluses in capitals are the reason why I absolutely love to fiddle with the number of trade imports possible and just increase the amount in our capital as much as possible so that we can have as many of these surpluses, because these surpluses in the capital are usually national bonuses. And then when you're exporting, it gives your army maintenance an additional -2.50%. Now, I'm not sure if this decreases your maintenance further. If, for instance, in Epirus, we are producing currently 1 wine, I believe that is, yeah, Foinik is the only city in the whole province that is producing wine. But for instance, if we produce multiple wines, so if we had multiple surpluses, I'm not sure if that would actually further decrease the army maintenance cost. But yeah, that is definitely something that you should be paying attention to. You should first check which resources you are currently producing, and try to get the best possible surpluses that you can. One thing that you should be careful, though, is that anytime you have a surplus in any of your provinces, the AI will automatically start offering you trade agreements. Now, if you do agree to those trade agreements, that means that you will lose that surplus because you will be exporting the surplus. Certainly, like I just pointed out, you do still get the when exporting surplus. However, those are definitely not as strong as actually keeping them, at least in your capital. Don't get me wrong, if you export from any of your other provinces, that is definitely worth it. Now, the way you can actually make sure that you do not make the mistake of accidentally exporting something from your capital, a surplus from your capital, is that right here in the trade overview, all you have to do is just click this little icon right here, which means that right now we are blocking the surpluses from being even offered to us as far as capital surpluses go. So, for instance, right now we have a surplus of fish, which means that our local population growth... Wait, let me just check. That's right, surplus in capital, national freeman happiness is automatically +5. So all of our freemen have a +5% happiness bonus due to the fact that we have a surplus of fish due to 2 cities producing fish in our capital. Now, the AI will not be offering us any trade agreements for the 1 surplus of fish. However, if either one, so if either Toron or Orikos started producing 2 units of fish, not just 1, and we would have an additional surplus, so we would have a surplus of 2, then the AI would once again offer a trade agreement for that additional unit. So you would still keep the capital surplus, but still be able to export the additional +1 surplus. Lack of commander. Now, do not be fooled by this, please. I've done this mistake myself, and from what I heard, many of YouTubers have fallen prey to this little quote-unquote trap right here. Keep in mind that if you select a general for your army, that general has a monthly chance every each and single month, depending also on their abilities. I believe that the general chance, or rather the base chance for units to gain loyalty is 0.10, 0.1 or so % outside of battle of the units in the army, a single cohort in the army becoming loyal to the general. Now, loyalty to a general is in a way good, but in a way very bad. Now, it's good because the general actually starts paying the loyal cohorts himself from his own treasury, which means that you no longer have to worry about paying for the maintenance of the cohorts that are loyal to a current general. However, the bad part is that the more cohorts that are loyal to a certain general, the general starts getting ambitions, and his loyalty slowly starts falling. And if it falls low enough, and if he has enough loyal cohorts, he can actually cause secession problems, he can cause civil wars, etc., etc. So definitely something to keep a watch on. That is why I usually do not have generals in my armies in peace times, except for our monarch, because it's always good to have, at least in my mind, it's always good to have cohorts be loyal to your current monarch. But the moment we declare war, or right before we're about to declare war, I always put a general, possibly a good general, at the helm of an army. Now, the abilities are different. As you can see, loyalty gain chance 0.02. So this guy would have a 0. I believe 12, or is it 0.2 base? Maybe we can check. Oh, 0.50. My bad. And he has an additional 0.02% chance of that happening. So, yeah. It would be a 0.52. However, this is only in peacetime. So, or rather, not in peace times, but in times when the army is not in a battle. But while in battles, while in sieges, etc., that number actually increases by a whole lot. And if you win sieges, etc., with the army, with the general, there's an even larger chance that a cohorts become loyal to that general. Definitely something to keep an eye on. Scorn Families. Now, what this means... This means each and single family expects, as it says right here, every family expects to be paid 2% of the state income. Since this is not the case, the family considers themselves scorned. And then you can actually see, they consider on the very bottom, they consider themselves scorned due to certain people having no positions, etc. Now, this family should no longer be scorned because I just put Gorgos Peneid to be the general of the first Stratos, so our first army. So if we actually proceeded, yeah, the Scorn family is gone. Of course, your family will not be scorned, as you are actually the monarch, so that is definitely a very, very nice bonus. And the Peneid family is now no longer scorned. You can see the alarm went away due to the fact that we made it possible for them to actually have 3% of the state income, not just 2%. Now, I will be restarting this because I just don't want to have a general in my army from the very beginning, because you cannot dismiss a general right away. You actually have to wait for 12 months after putting a general in control of an army before you can even consider not just dismissing him, but even if you consider swapping him with a different general. You cannot do it before 12 months have passed. Inventions, I've already explained those. Omens! Sorry about that little peek right there. In the Omens, you can see religious unity. Currently, 100% of our entire... Oppa, what did I just do? 100% of our entire population is Hellenic. Now, you can imagine that as we continue upwards and actually take northern lands, these lands are usually, as we can see right here, these lands are usually Druidic. This is all Hellenic, so that's pretty good, pretty nice, pretty nice. Druidic, Iberic, Megalithic, Canaanite, Kemetic, etc, etc, etc. You get the point. But yeah, right now we have 100% religious unity. Omen power usually is 100%, however you increase that with a Hierophant, which is, we'll get to the government, but that is the guy right over there. He increases the Omen power. Over here you can also sacrifice, or rather pay, some of your religious points, quite a few of your religious points, really, in order to increase your stability by 1. Now, do know that there are still some random events that can increase your stability. However, the amount of these random events, if you ask me, is kind of low right now in the base game, or rather at where the game is right now. And you can also invoke Devotio. Devotio. Because when you go to a war, of course, you do accumulate war exhaustion, and you can reduce this war exhaustion by 2 every single time you invoke Devotio. Now, it doesn't say so right here, but it costs 100 military power for each invocation. Now, let's check the actual omens. We have each one, of course, gives you a different thing. The Blessing of Ares gives us discipline. Then we have aggressive expansion change, national manpower, national commerce income, research points, national unrest, national tax, and national population growth. Now, a lot of YouTubers, especially like I've seen a Roomba play, and he mentions that this is literally the last one he would ever consider taking. Now, I feel the same in early game. Really, in the very beginning of the game, my goal, or at least my tactic in this game, has been to either go for national commerce income, or rather, at the very beginning, either national tax or discipline. Discipline, of course, to make sure that you gain some lands at the very beginning of the game. These omens usually last for, I believe, 5 years each. Yes, I believe so. And but you can, of course, increase the duration of these omens. So you have to consider this. If you take, for instance, Blessing of Ares, you have discipline plus 5.80%. However, do consider this, that if you manage to win a war and then you get stuck because some big blue blob next to you is basically blocking any sort of potential expansions, that means you're still stuck with that omen for the next, God knows, 4 years. You can't pick anything. You can't switch in between them. You are locked with that one. So definitely give it a good thought, not to mention that it actually does cost 200, which, once again, even though you actually start off with 200, and as you can see, we're only gaining +4, so number pretty high. Aggressive expansion change. If you're a little bit worried, if, I don't know, if like me in one of my Epirus games and you basically conquer this entire area and suddenly have an aggressive expansion of, I don't know, like 30 or something, I think I had it. Definitely something to consider taking, and just stay in peace for like 5 years if possible. You can, in the meantime, of course, with a large empire, you actually have things you can do. You can actually move, you can move your population, you can make sure that your commerce, that your economy and whatnot is working the way it's supposed to work, or rather, even better. National manpower, 43.200. Like, usually I don't worry about increasing my actual manpower, at least not the maximum. What I am worried about is, and I hope that this is actually tweaked, because as you can see, we only gain 143 each month from our population, because that is the only gain where you can get it from. The only place that you can actually get manpower is from your freemen. Well, freemen plus if you increase the training camps. As you can see, local manpower goes +30, and I believe they actually produce more manpower. That's right, local manpower goes up, so you would actually be increasing it a little bit further. But here's why I say that I hope it gets tweaked, because in my experience, after, I don't know, winning a big war, for instance, I played as Syracuse. What is their maximum right now? Their maximum right now is 200. Alright, that's a little bit low, but their maximum, you can see it right now. They have this number. When I played as Syracuse, all I did was attack Siculia in order to unite this part of the island. After, I also took Akragas, and, you know, I'm not gonna say that you're stuck afterwards, but you're not really gonna go to war with Carthage, who is just gonna completely wreck you if you do. But you have to look in other directions to go. But even if I looked which direction I could go to, I couldn't do anything, because due to that relatively small scale war, if you ask me. We were on, I don't know, like 5,000 manpower. And it takes you, I believe, somebody actually calculated, I believe it takes 25 in-game years to go from 0 manpower back to your maximum. 25 years of just sitting there and waiting for your manpower to go up. Not fun. So I really hope that they do increase the manpower gain at least a little bit, or tweak the possibility of increasing that gain. Not just the maximum, but the actual gain. National commerce income speaks volume on its own. Commerce right now is 0.16, so we definitely wouldn't be taking that one. If we would be taking anything to increase our economy, we would definitely go for the national tax first. Research points, always also a very nice thing if you have a bad research ratio like we have right now, and you really want to get your research going to beat your opponents, beat your neighbors, to better bonuses. National unrest, always nice if you have a high aggressive expansion. Not to mention Epirus especially has an event in, like, I don't know, a year or two or something, where for those of you that are not familiar with the Epirus history, there's this tribe in Epirus, or rather clan in Epirus, called the Molossians. They were the largest clan, and they usually decided a lot of things. Now, Epirus was actually put into rule by, I believe, the Phrygians. He had the Phrygians back up. However, the Molossians absolutely hated that fact and actually pushed for his successor, or rather his pretender, this guy, Neoptolemus, to be the king instead. Now, and you will see once we start playing the game, in like a year or two, there's gonna be an event where you are giving a choice. Either you continue playing as Epirus, but you, I believe, or rather lose 2 stability, and you gain the Molossians' anger trait throughout your empire for, I think, 5 or 10 years or something, which automatically gives you a penalty of, I believe, -3 or -4 even, national unrest. So if you don't want to bother with that, you can take that, but I usually don't. National population growth is something that, while some people, like I said earlier, definitely not something that I would take in the very beginning, but once you're large enough, honestly, I think it's viable. I really, really think it is. Like, if you bump up the national population growth by 0.23%, and you take some other things as well, like, for instance, I don't know, get your provinces to import grain, to import fish, livestock, etc. You can actually bump up the growth of the population. Like, as you can see right here, currently, right, the population growth works as follows. A random population type is selected once the pop is actually, let's say, born. One random pop can grow. Not all 3 of them at once, only 1. And if we go to this well, not slider, but like this tab right here, it says every month 0.33% is gained, and it is currently at 0%. Now, this does not mean that every single month you have a 0.33% chance that you gain a pop. No. It's literally just, I don't know, you could just get rid of that percentage icon right there, and you would understand. Every single month, it increases by 0.33. So right now, it would take, I believe, like 14, 15 or something years. I mean, I can do a very quick calculation, just a moment. So 100 divided by 0.33, that's 303 divided by 12 months. So right now, it would take 25 years for a single pop to be born. Now, do keep in mind that we already are producing fish here, so there is a little bit of a bump there. But there is a possibility to keep bumping that number up, especially in lower population ones, because as you can see, the negative growth at the very bottom says city population is already on 24. Wait, is it on 24? Yeah, it's on 24. So for each pop, it actually gives you 0.01% less gained. So in lower population ones, it's actually higher. No, it's not. I was wrong. That's because this is these regions are mountainous, while these regions are only hills. There we go. That explains it. So if this region was also only mountainous, it would actually be gaining 0.37%, not 0.27. But like I said, you can actually, if you bump it up by an additional 0.24%, not to mention that the Omen power can be increased, of course, as well as importing grain, fish, etc. You can actually bump that up by quite a lot. And let's say that you bump it up by, for instance, up to 0.7. It is possible. It is actually possible, but okay, let's say 0.6. So 100 divided by 0.6 is 166 divided by 12. That's a new pop every 13 years, or rather 14 years. Now, granted, when you have one single province, it doesn't sound like much, does it? Because right now we only have, if we check right here, we have... Wait, where can I... There we go. We only have 8 cities. So only 8 pops would grow every 15 years. Now, that doesn't sound like much. But when you have an empire spanning 100 cities, that means an additional 100 population every 15 years. Pops are your economy. They are your research. They are your manpower. They are essentially everything that you need in order to continue your expansions, to continue your growth, etc., etc. And also, of course, to do colonization. For those of you that don't know how colonization works, you basically have to have 10 pops in a single city in order to colonize a single province or a single city adjacent to it. And you can do that every single year. Like, you can do that from one province every year. So, for instance, if we had 10 pops in Bassiana, sorry, one year we could do Acumincum, and then we'd have to move one pop into there, etc., etc., etc. Now, of course, that does mean that you need a lot of pops in order to continue your colonization, in order to continue making sure that you can keep growing, etc., etc. So, yeah, personally, I believe it's viable. But for the very first moment, I believe we will either go for discipline or national tax, just to have a little bit more income with which we could support a larger army. Now, I do know that this video is already gone for 50 minutes, but I do wish to just get everything done as far as the actual tutorial and pilot goes in this episode. In the nation overview, as you can see right here, we have a national bonus. However, in order to have this national bonus, so monthly tyranny, national citizen happiness, and an additional point of mana, let's just call it like the internet calls it, mana, every each and single month. But in order to have this, we need to make sure that our national ideas are actually in unison with what these say. So right now, the game, or rather than that, our national bonus will be active once we have 1 military idea and 2 oratory ideas. Now, if we click here, we can see all the different ideas that we have available. Right now, we only have 3 in each. This, of course, increases as you can see once you advance in technology, or rather research. You can actually unlock all of these. But for the beginning, you have in martial, morale of armies, permanent trireme cost, reinforcement speed, and morale recovery. That's always very, very nice, though personally I would go for the morale of armies probably. In civic, build cost, national commerce, national slave output, monthly corruption, monthly general loyalty, admiral loyalty. Now, this is a nice thing to have until the general has multiple cohorts loyal to him, because at that point you are literally just trying to stop a bleeding artery with your hand, which, as we all know, just does not work. Improve opinion maximum. That's also, as you can see, an additional plus 33%. So we could increase our opinion with somebody else by quite a lot. With this bonus, and the invention that also increases it by 50%. Do keep in mind though that that increase is on the base value, so on the 50. And then religion, state religion, country civilization level, that's also very nice to have, but we are literally just looking at the military and oratory ideas for ourselves. Loyalty of subject states, we currently don't have any anyway, and ruler popularity gain. I believe that it is always the best idea is just to go as the national idea says in order to have these bonuses. Now this bonus does increase. The monthly tyranny and national citizen happiness does not increase, but the amount of mana, or rather the amount of points that you gain, does increase as you increase in power. So right now, like I said earlier, we are a local power between 2 to 24 cities. What did we say? How many cities do we currently have? We currently have 8 cities. So once we increase our power to 25, we will become a regional power, and we will have a bonus of 2 points per month, not just 1, which is very, very lovely. Government, something that we touched on earlier. Hierophant, that's what we touched on. As you can see, we have all of these guys, by the way, they have wages. So if you have a Scorn family, and that family has somebody with a good score in any of the skills required. For instance, we have a Philosophus with only a religion, or rather with a zeal of 7. If you had a Scorn family, and one of those Scorn family members had a zeal of above 7, definitely just put him into the government there, and the Scorn family should go away. Unless, you know, the current guy's family would then become scorned if his family does not hold enough positions, or rather does not hold enough wage. Now let's see the bonuses here. Aggressive expansion change, that's always nice to have as high as possible, especially if you are a rapidly expanding force. Just a moment, I need to take a drink. Oh, been talking non-stop, my throat is starting to get a little bit sore. I have to take care of it. Sacrifice to the gods cost. That is, the sacrifice to the gods is the stability increase. Mercenary maintenance. Once you have a good enough income, which I usually reach with commerce, and I'm sure that most of the other players that play this game reach with commerce as well. Once you have a good enough income, you really don't even have to worry about manpower as much. Note, as much. But you can just have mercenaries fight your wars for you. Next, morale of armies, of course, very important, both in battles and outside of them. Omen power. Yep, this increases the omen power. For instance, if we did not have a good, this guy being as good as he is, the discipline would not be 5.80. I believe the base is 5. Though, don't quote me on that. I am not too sure if my math was correct on that one. Philosophus, monthly legitimacy. That is also something very, very nice to have. Because the amount of legitimacy, as you can see right here, with 100% legitimacy, we have 50 maximum loyalty. Plus 50, sorry. I believe the minimum... I forgot what the minimum is. Let's check. Base is 50. There we go. Base is 50, and with a positive legitimacy, we can reach all the way to 100. So if our legitimacy was, I don't know, only 50%, we would only be able to increase the max loyalty by 20 plus 25, which means that each and single one of these guys would have a maximum loyalty of 75. No matter how connected he is to your family, no matter how loyal he is to you, you could never have his loyalty higher than 75. So that, of course, makes legitimacy very, very important. You can increase it. If it's lower than 100, you can actually increase it, but you gain, I believe, corruption. I don't think you gain tyranny, but you definitely do gain corruption, and you also lose quite a few points every single time you do that. And not to mention, if you are corrupt, it actually decreases the opinion of the population where you are currently governing. And of course, you are always the governor. Like, that cannot be changed. You cannot change the governor of your capital province. Next, military. These are military traditions. Now, each, not nation, but each culture has their own traditions. So Romans have their own traditions. We have our own traditions, etc., etc. You get the point. Everybody has their own. I'll just leave it at that. It is impossible to gain all of them. That is simply impossible. So my suggestion is to pick one, maybe two, that you wish to go down on, that you wish to keep taking, and just stick with those. I usually go for either heavy infantry, as we do have the phalanx power and everything. Phalanx tactic. As well as light cavalry bonuses, siege ability bonuses. That's always very, very nice to have indeed. The first one is usually for cavalry, since of course Greeks were known for their, or at least Macedonians were known for their companion cavalry. Arms for hire, also light infantry and cavalry is the first one. Second one is heavy infantry and I suppose triremes and a little bit of fortifications. And the last one is basically a combination of both, or just random. Cohort starting experience, trireme cost, light cavalry, offense, enslavement efficiency. This is something very, very nice, and that is the reason that I usually go for the this column right here, the 20% enslavement efficiency, which means that you gain more slaves as you siege down cities. There is a random chance that you get, or rather a percentage of chance, of course, that you actually take one of those pops and enslave them in your capital. So you can eventually find your capital overflowing with slaves, really, if you just continue doing this. Light infantry, and just as you can see, everything combined right here, except for really, I mean, light cavalry offense. Alright, so that is that. You can of course also see all the different stats that are increased right here. So any sort of increases, whether it is via trade imports or anything like that, you can see all of them right here. Technology, already went through that. Religion, already went through that. Economy as well. Diplomacy, well, this is probably something very, very familiar to everybody, the diplomacy screen. The amount of choices that you can do is currently very limited, and I'm kind of hoping that they add a few additional things. Offer alliance, guarantee, like covert actions, you're literally only limited to supporting rebels and fabricating claims. Fabricating claims, by the way, is complete. It is instant. It is not like in CK2 or EU4 where you have a random chance that you have a claim fabricated. Nope, you just click this little button right here and you suddenly have a claim, and within a month you can actually declare war and press that claim. Here we see alliance, subjects. So currently Macedon has a few subjects around him. Currently is guaranteed by the Seleucid Empire and Egypt. So these two big monkeys right here. Granting military access to Argos, is allowed military access through the same people, so currently through his subjects, of course. He is currently exporting something to Egypt, and also importing something from Egypt. There you go. That is the diplomacy and decisions. This is also very limited, and I'm kind of hoping that they are going to increase this number as well. You can, of course, adopt different sort of monarchies, different sort of governments. That is how, for instance, you can actually turn a migratory tribe eventually into an actual civilized nation, civilized empire. You can do that, yeah, and I might actually do that in a separate Let's Play. Expand the Oracle of Dodona. The renovation of Dodona begins. Reunite Alexander's empire. In order to do that, you have to have quite a lot. Change his name to Argead Empire. And as you can see right there, the Argead Empire will gain claims on the regions of Macedonia, Hellas, Thrace, Asia, Phrygia, Cappadocia, Cilicia, Bithynia, etc., etc. Basically, the entirety of Alexander's lands you gain claims on. And these are the cities, the light green ones, are the cities that you absolutely have to control in order to form, or rather reunite, Alexander's empire. Macedon will gain claims on the region of Macedonia. That's definitely something you can do later on when you are actually strong enough to take on Macedon. Characters. I believe we already went through what characters do. But just to check real quick, they have stats, martial, finesse, charisma. That's the one. There we go. And zeal. Prominence. Actually unsure what prominence does. I kind of forgot about that. But the more prominent somebody is, the more powerful he is, especially in republics and whatnot. Popularity is, of course, also just as important there as it is here, though, because popularity always decreases. You can, of course, hold games, for instance. You pay a little bit of money and gain popularity that way. You also gain popularity by leading armies and winning sieges, etc., etc., etc. And popularity, depending on the popularity, I know that a few stats also depend on that, including, I believe, loyalty of other people. Not sure about that one, though. Corruption, we already mentioned that, and loyalty. Mercenaries, you can actually check where the closest mercenaries to you are and how much their maintenance, note, maintenance would be. This is not how much it costs to hire them. This is how much the monthly maintenance would be. Do keep in mind, though, that unlike, for instance, in CK2, if you want to disband the mercenary group, you actually have to pay. As it said right there on the very bottom, disbanding this unit would cost 77.50 treasury. Let's just say money, gold, pieces of gold. 77.50 pieces of gold just to disband this unit, so that you wouldn't have to pay maintenance anymore. So you can imagine that, yeah, you have to have quite the treasury in order to start using mercenaries in your wars. At any rate, guys, I am very much looking forward to this Let's Play. Let's play Epirus. Let's make Pyrrhus's legacy even stronger than it was in reality, in the actual history. Hopefully, you'll be joining me for that. I'm sorry that this episode has been a little kind of long, but I wanted to get all of that out of the way. There are still, of course, other things that we will be covering as we play along, but these are more or less all of the basics that you should know as we go into this game. Thank you very much for joining me. I have been Kaiser. I will see you next time in possibly the first episode, and until then, as always, ad gloriam.